3 plays is all it took for Jordan Love to get benched on Saturday night, and because it's preseason, that's actually a good thing. In this episode, we're going to recap the game that was, see who's flirting with that roster bubble, and I tell you the number one thing to watch in Saturday night at Denver. Grab yourself a drink, and it's time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. All right. Why are you laughing over there? You good?
I got the giggles. It's okay.
We're gonna try and hit this. We're gonna try and get through this recording a lot quicker than we did last week. It was midnight when we got to bed last week.
It was bad. It was real bad.
And then I got up. My alarm went off at 5:30. I did drive to Green Bay. Went to the practice. I learned something for all of you. I'm gonna say young parents because I'm gonna put myself in that bracket. For all of you parents out there, you really have an option when you go to these Packers practices. You can either wait in line and hope your child's bike gets picked by one of the players to take that dream drive down to practice, or you can actually get a good seat and watch the practice. I learned the hard way that we drove 3 hours to practice, hoped that my son's bike would get chosen, and we had to watch practice like behind a brick wall. Have you ever been to their practices before? Have you ever driven over there and watched any of their practices? No,
I haven't. I'd love to. Hopefully when my kids are a little younger than yours, so hopefully when my kids are a few years older, we'll make some trips down there, do family night and stuff like that. So, but no, I haven't yet.
I think family night's the way to do it. Man, parents are crazy. They are psycho. Like, they are way more excited about the players than the kids are. Like, the kids are like picking their nose and like complaining how hot it is and they don't want to be there. The parents are like right up in their faces that you need to get in line and wait, get your bike picked. And afterwards, it's the coolest thing. You're within feet. I fist bump Anders Carlson. I saw AJ Dillion just like 2 feet away from me. And the entire time my kid was complaining that it was hot. He didn't want to be there anymore. I'm like, this is the Green Bay Packers. Like, these are superheroes 2 feet away from you. Why are you complaining? So definitely give it some time. Wait till they're a little bit older. Maybe he's going to be 7 tomorrow, my son. So I don't know. But I don't know what the right age is, but it wasn't 6. I'll tell you that much. Not for me, at least.
Well, what grade is he in? So he's 7. He's probably first grade, right?
He's going into second. We started him
Second
early.
grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because thinking about my childhood, I mean, I've always my family have always been Packer fans, and I grew up watching the Packers. But a core memory for me was when I was in 3rd grade. I remember writing, it was like a report or something on what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yep.
And I remember writing that I wanted to play for the Green Bay Packers because that was my entire life. We played backyard football at my house, no pads or anything, just smearing the crap out of each other. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play for the Packers. So that's a core memory for me in 3rd grade. So maybe next year. Maybe next year's the right year.
Maybe. I don't know. I do know that I had a 4-year-old daughter who was bawling because she didn't get to go, and she wanted to go see the Green Bay Packers. So I think she's my number one Packers fan, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah. Both of I have 2 girls.
Yes.
And I've started early, and I've ingrained the love for the Packers at an early age. My oldest is 4, and she's gotten real excited about the Packers as of late. Like during the preseason game on Saturday, she was taking a nap, and my wife went to get her when she woke up, and she said, "Guess what's on the TV? The Packers are playing." And she got so excited and came down and came running into the living room. And then my youngest, she'll be 2 next month, and she sees really any logo on a shirt, whether it's the G or not, and she goes, "Packers."
Yep.
Packers. So starting them young, getting that love for the Pack ingrained early.
We could probably do a whole side episode on, how to brainwash your children to be Packers fans, just raise them right is really the title of that.
Absolutely.
So Great parenting. I always feel bad for those little kids in Vikings and Bears jerseys.
Yeah.
They just never had a chance. Never had a chance at happiness. So, real quick, we'll start the video off. We got another 5 subscribers over the last week. I started posting some TikToks and some YouTube shorts. So definitely check us out on our TikTok channel. We'll subscribe first off on YouTube, but slowly seeing this channel grow. Appreciate the support. A few more comments in the comment section from last week's video, but that's the most I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to drill down on it too much. Christian, I texted you this morning and asked if you'd catch the preseason game. I had to work, so I had it on at work and was able to catch the first drive. You caught a little bit more of the game, but I think as soon as the starters went out, you didn't really, it was kind of more background noise than anything. Don't let me put words in your mouth. But biggest
Yeah.
takeaway, I started off the introduction video on that side of it. I mean, the starting offense went out there, 3 plays, threw a 65-yard pass to Dontavian Wicks. You couldn't ask for a better start from the offensive side of the football. We didn't see them the rest of the game, which is a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, completely understandable. And then the defense held their own for the most part, gave up 3 points overall, but on a drive that did have some momentum heading towards, maybe a touchdown or whatnot. The defense was able to get a sack, put them in a second or third and long and stop them. So we got to see the starters, a little bit of a flash there. I guess we'll dive into maybe some who had some good games, who had some, suspect games. What were your overall takeaways? Was it nice to see Packers football on a TV at home? I watched it at work and it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Yeah, it was very nice to turn the TV on, get the Packers on the big screen and actually get to watch some football for the first time this year. I honestly, I watched that first drive and it's really all I needed to see. I mean, it would have been nice to
Right.
see a little bit more, but that drive was stellar. And the play that ended it, that 65-yard touchdown, love to Wicks. Some people may say, "Oh, the cornerback got injured on the play," because I believe he was like limping afterwards or something like that. And some may contribute Wicks breaking away from him to him getting injured. But outside of Wicks breaking away to get open, the accuracy of
Yeah.
Love's downfield pass was perfect. It couldn't have been in a better spot. And that's the type of play that deep ball play that Love struggled with at least early on last year. So to see that in the first preseason game, the first shot down the field, it was right on the money. And actually that kind of brings up something that I was going to talk about later in practice this week. So in practice on Tuesday, Love hit Christian Watson for a deep ball for a touchdown in practice. And Watson beat Stokes, broke away, got open, and Love put it in the perfect spot again. And there was a beat writer that had commented that's the third or fourth time that's happened in training camp this year. And Love's accuracy downfield has gotten so much better through the offseason. So that's something exciting to see. And then after that drive in the preseason game, like you said, I had the game on, but there weren't a whole lot of other highlights to the game. I mean, the Packers played well, but you got to consider the Browns are also putting their second team, third team defense, second team, third team offense in the game. So it gets a little slow watching through a preseason game like that. Ultimately, it was great to see him on the big screen again, though.
Well, it's easy for us as Packers fans who are excited that the season's starting. We got our first preseason game, and you couldn't ask as a fan, you couldn't ask for a better way to start it as well because it gets you really excited that, oh man, this is our guy. I agree with you. I'm glad you brought it up. That was one thing last season that Jordan Love struggled with was that deep ball. But there was one other thing that he struggled with, and I saw this a little bit to an extent while I did go to practice last week, is that he was almost a little bit late to make the decision. Like his throws were maybe a half a second behind of when they should have been thrown, and that caused to be, not the prettiest pass, or it was more of a contested pass than it needed to be. I saw a few glimpses of that at practice, enough where I, made a mention to it to my brother who came with me. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is that we have to maybe a little bit tame our expectations. Yes, he's the highest paid quarterback in the league. Yes, his second throw of preseason is a 65 just dime, and it was a beautiful pass to Wicks for that touchdown. But we're going to have Packers fans, and we're still going to have growing pains, I think, throughout the first couple weeks of this upcoming season. He's still young. He can play ball. I think he's going to play very well and compete for an MVP if he plays as well as I think he's capable of playing. But there are still some moments where maybe he's just on an off day, or maybe he gets caught up just in a, I don't know, just a little bit of brain fog. There's going to be some moments, and there's definitely areas to improve, which should get us excited because his ceiling is he hasn't hit his ceiling. He still has a lot of area to improve. But yeah, that I wanted to point that little comment out there. We don't really have much of a script, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, I mean, I want him to be as good as the next person. I want him to be the greatest Packers quarterback in NFL history. But he's I think I think there's gonna be some moments that we see throughout the early part of the season, and I'm just cautioning everyone right now. Let's not hit the panic button if he doesn't go, 27 for 27 and 18 touchdowns in week one. It's just he's gonna have some up and down games throughout the season, and we just got to know that he has the talent to be the quality quarterback that we think he can be.
Yeah. You just got to have faith. You got to have faith in the player that he is. You got to have faith in the Packers organization, the coaching staff, the front office in deciding to draft and then ultimately pay this guy. You got to have faith. So when you have those down games, can't just give up on the guy, right? And
Nope.
in talking about the game, one thing that I guess I wish I would have seen a little bit more of with the first team offense is Josh Jacobs. I think he had one carry, and it wasn't a bad carry, but just wish we could have
Yeah,
seen
5 yards
a little bit more of that.
or
Yeah,
4 yards, 6 yards.
averaging 6 yards a carry right now, so that's
There you
great.
go.
But yeah, I just would have liked to see a little bit more of him. And if the starters aren't playing next week or this week, whatever you want to call it, we may not get a whole lot of Josh Jacobs the rest of the preseason. So that would have been nice to see, but could say that about a lot of the young and new Packers players.
So let's dive into maybe on the offensive side of the ball, some players that did jump out. I watched, like I watched like the 6 minute highlight that NFL.com posts. And then I went through the stat sheet as far as, maybe some things that stood out. As far as on the wide receiver side of things, someone who had a really great game would be Grant DeBow. He had probably the nicest showing of any of the receivers that played that game. He had 5 receptions for 66 yards. And he had some really fancy catches too. He had two particular on the sidelines that were like toe tappers and some high skill level receptions from that wide receiving group. So that adds another layer to that wide receiving core of, man, we don't we don't have a number one weapon. And I don't want to get into that in this show. I hate even saying that because Matt LaFleur doesn't even want to talk about the whole number one wide receiver
Does
question.
it make you
But
want to
it just
vomit?
no, it doesn't make me want to vomit. But that's a good problem to have. But he had a great showing, and the thing to keep in mind is that he was the third wide receiver we drafted last year. We took Jaden Reed first. We took Dontavian Wicks second, and then Grant DeBow was our third wide receiver in that draft. And we already know what these first two guys can do. I mean, if this DeBow character turns out to be halfway decent, that's unheard of to be able to draft three talented wide receivers that can contribute, you know, in the same draft class. Outside of that, Bo Melton did not have a great game. That was a little bit shocking, and that's going to be something that I continue to watch. I think we all should have eyes on that in the next game upcoming against Denver. He had 4 targets and only 1 reception, and some of them were bad. They were good throws. Yes, Jordan Love wasn't passing the ball, but they were good throws that were catchable on the money for the most part, and had some drops there. So you don't like to see that. That's a little bit. I mean, we saw what Bo Melton can do in the playoffs, so I'm not throwing in the towel on him, but he needs to have a bounce back game against Denver for sure. And then on the running back side of things, boy, what do we got going on at the running back competition? If I asked you right now, Christian, who is our number 2 running back, your answer would be what?
Oh, that's tough because Marshawn Lloyd's injured right now too, so we didn't even get to see him. Who was it Wilson? Wilson was I guess the
Emmanuel
next guy up
Wilson?
after Dillon. And like I said, I didn't watch the rest of the game super closely. I know he had a touchdown. heard his name a little more often than AJ Dillon. So it's tough. It's really tough to say. I mean, Dillon obviously didn't play spectacularly to show us that he's the number 2 back and is going to be getting occasional carries. But I mean, once Marshawn Lloyd's healthy, that maybe it's a whole different ball game. Maybe it's not even a question at that point. But he's got a hamstring injury. We
Right.
know all
One
about
carry.
those with yeah, right.
Lloyd finishes the game with 1 carry for 8 yards and gets himself on the injury list once again. And he did not practice on Tuesday. So,
Mhm.
I mean, with Wilson getting these reps, that's a whole nother thing on, okay, I don't think he's going to get cut for sure or not, but is he going to be a reliable third option from a health standpoint? We gave him the benefit of the doubt the first, couple days of practice that he missed or training camp when he was out. You don't like to see him go down. I think hopefully he can get some playing time on Sunday night against Denver. But on the AJ Dillon side of things, we had a conversation. I don't know if it was in last week's episode or the week before, but he's leaner. And I'm not convinced that he's this short yardage running back. And he's never been the short yard running back. As much as we think he would be capable of picking up 1 yard, I don't know if it's his backfield vision or if he's just not seeing the hole or what the case may be. But there's one particular drive, and it was the second possession after Love and the starters went out. That next time the Packers got the ball, they had a 2nd and 1. And AJ Dillon runs right for a -1 yard. So now it's 3rd and 2. And then they hand the ball back off to AJ Dillon from shotgun. He runs for 1 yard. It's 4th and 1. What do? They go for it. They give it to AJ Dillon, and he does not get the yard. So 3 consecutive times, and we're not even talking about a full starting defense. So that's a whole nother concern. He's not able to pick up that 1 yard. I have serious doubts on what we have in AJ Dillon. And since we're not committed to him with a long-term contract, I mean, does he stay on the team? I don't mean to get too hot of a take right now, but he seems like why is he not better than what he should be? I guess it's almost maddening to a certain extent on why he can't pick up a yard in 3 attempts. And I'm not the only Packers fan that feels this way.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember that specific drive that you're talking about, and as soon as he got stuffed on that 4th and 1, I instantly thought of what we had talked about last time we were talking about
Yeah.
AJ Dillon, how you would think that he's this goal line, 1 yard to go power back, but he really hasn't been. So as soon as that happened, I thought of our conversation about that. As far as him not making the team, I think there's more to AJ Dillon in the Packers locker room than just his performance on the field. I mean, we've heard both Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd talking to the press and saying how AJ Dillon's kind of been that quote unquote veteran guy in the running backs room that is kind of helping these 2 new guys learn the playbook, learn the facility, learn the organization in general. So I think he brings some value as a guy that's been there for a few years, especially in that running backs room. So I don't know that I foresee him not making the team necessarily, but with what we saw on Saturday, there's a big question mark on if he really gets much playing time at all or if he's in a strictly backup position.
I think AJ Dillon gets the start on Sunday night. I think that he probably gets, I don't know, 1 or 2 possessions. They know what they got out of him. I mean, I don't know. Do you really need to play him much more than that? But I think I think at best you put him as number 3. If you get a healthy Marshawn Lloyd who comes out, and you've even said it yourself, you think Marshawn Lloyd has a chance to make his way up that depth chart. Nobody's going past Josh Jacobs. So I think Marshawn Lloyd, when healthy, takes that number 2 spot. So Dillon falls to 3. Why keep him? I don't know. I don't want to see him go. I like the guy. It's like losing any Packer that you've been cheering for the last 4 years. But if Manuel Wilson, who by the way finished with 67 rushing yards, a touchdown, averaged 5.2 yards per carry, and had 50 yards after contact, and AJ Dillon can't even pick up a 1 yard gain on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th down, I don't think there's a roster spot for AJ Dillon when this unless he shows up at like special teams, which we need special teams players. I'm concerned if I'm AJ Dillon. I need to go out there and bust my ass and I don't know. I don't know. I think it's something to watch and it's something to be like seriously consider if it's worth keeping the guy on the roster. I digress. That's all I got to say on that matter.
Anybody else on the offensive side of the ball that you want to highlight?
I mean, not really. The offensive side seems pretty clean for the most part. I will bring up, I think it's sparking memory. I mean, as far as inactives that we saw on Saturday night, we didn't get Jordan Morgan, so we're not getting a whole lot of context of how he performed in a game-like situation. Zach Tom was obviously out, but I think he's already kind of shored up that right tackle position. Tucker Kraft, it did not play as well, but he did come back and participate in 11 on 11s on Tuesday. So, I mean, that Morgan was the only other one that I would have had my eyes on. I think I hopefully he can get some playing time on Sunday night. When it comes to the quarterback battle, I'll get to that. I'm going to save that one as we look forward to Denver. But that's all I really got on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, Lukas Van Ness, I know you got some things to say about him, but he played not only the first half, but he went into the third quarter too and played some pretty high amount of snaps.
Yeah. Yeah, and Matt LaFleur actually commented on how much playing time that he got. And what LaFleur said was the reason why he was giving him more reps in this preseason game and plans to have him play in this next preseason game against the Broncos is because of his limited play in college. What's the word he used? His abbreviated college career. So I dug into his college career at Iowa a little bit. Might be surprised to know Luke Van Ness never started a game for the Iowa Hawkeyes. He was never a starter. He was always a rotational guy. He came in 2021 as a redshirt freshman and he was rotated in, never started, but immediately he was a dynamic defender in 21 as a redshirt freshman. 21, he had 8.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. And then in 22, he had 10.5 tackles for loss and 6 sacks. So LaFleur is basically saying because he was never a starter and only had 2 years in college where he actually played, he wants to get him some more reps, which may be why we didn't hear his name called as often last season, because they were kind of just slowly working him in. This year we may see more of an explosion like we did in the preseason game. It seemed like his name was always getting called on Saturday. So that was exciting to see. I hope to see more this coming game against the Broncos.
We take a first round pick on a guy that wasn't even a starter at Iowa. That's news to me. That's something that I definitely missed. So last year he played all 17 games, 24 tackles, 4 sacks. I think he's going to be more of a focus this upcoming season. He comes into his second year, and I didn't, like I said, didn't watch a whole lot of the game, but his name was consistently one of those things that was popping up in articles and from Matt LaFleur's mouth when the press conference came around. Another name that I think populated outside of him was Evan Williams. He's continuing to shine. He's battling for the starting safety position opposite of Xavier McKinney. Is that the best way to phrase that?
Yeah. I mean, do we know, is Xavier McKinney a strong safety or free safety? Because typically, if you got 2 safeties up top, you're going to have a strong safety that kind of works as more of a. I didn't play defense at all in high school or anything, so I guess I'm not 100% sure. I know one of them kind of comes in as another linebacker, as a run stopper, and then the other one is kind of free to, on a pass play, go wherever the ball's going. So do we know if Xavier McKinney is a free safety or strong safety?
I think it's the opposite too. It's kind of like Iceland and Greenland, where Greenland is actually covered in ice and Iceland is beautiful and full of nature.
Iceland is very nice. Are you quoting D2 Mighty Ducks?
No, but that's where I learned that. Emilio Estevez, Mighty Ducks. Anyway, there's going to be 2 safeties, and one's going to be Xavier McKinney. The other one is going to be either Bullard or Evan Williams, and it could be someone else. We don't know. It's early on in training camp, but Evan Williams and Grant DuBose, they've made names for themselves in practice these last couple of weeks. So I think one of the surprising things that came from the beat writers who are at every practice was that, yeah, they've been continuing to shine at practice, but they also shined at game time. And you look at a top performer on the offense and a top performer on the defense, really good outcomes, really good performances to see these guys translate that performance to the game time is essentially what I'm trying to say. Williams was the guy that forced the fumble to start the second half. Fuller should be worried. There's no position that is safe on this roster, and safety is definitely one of those that I think is wide open. Do you recall if Bullard played a lot, like at all in the first, like any idea when they pulled him out? Did he play the whole first half, or you
I
not? Maybe
don't
don't know that.
I don't know if he played the whole first half, but I know he was in there with the first team defense. And there was one play specifically that I
Right.
remember. It was a kind of an errant throw from, oh gosh, what's his name? Jameis Winston. And if the wide receiver hadn't tipped the ball, Bullard would have had a pick. It would have been a diving pick, but
Yep.
he was right there. I did see Bullard do that, and I did notice that he was in the game to start, and I just don't know when they eventually pulled him and Williams came in.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, overall, defense had a solid performance. They didn't give up a touchdown until 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They finished with three overall sacks, three total sacks in the game. They only gave up, what are we looking for? 188 passing yards and 56 rushing yards. So, what, 250, less than 250 total yards on is what they gave up. LaFleur did say that it was a pretty, vanilla, I guess, for lack of a better term. Don't quote me on that, but it was a pretty basic defense. I'm not throwing a whole lot of different packages out there. We want to get excited. I think especially that first drive, we were hoping that it was just going to be as awesome as the Packers' offense's first drive. But promising things across the board in the defense. Outside of those two players, I don't really have anyone else outside of Williams and Van Ness that kind of jumped off of the page. Do you have anyone else that you want to talk about on the defensive side of the ball?
Nope, that's we hit the couple of guys that I noticed. Like we've talked about, it was we didn't pay super close attention, and that's what you're going to get with these preseason games too. It's like you just mentioned, LaFleur said it's a very vanilla playbook, not a whole lot of flash, not a whole lot of showing your cards. So, and that's what you're going to get with preseason. And that's kind of why I didn't continue watching, because as you get further into these preseason games, some of them get exciting, but most of the time it's pretty mellow.
All right, so pop quiz. After one preseason game, who do you have winning the kicking competition? Go.
I honestly didn't pay that close attention to it. I guess
That's all right. That's all right. I got you.
I'm
When
at,
you
so
stumble,
just
I'll pick you up.
I
I'll
mean, I'm
lift you
just
up. I'll take you. I'll carry you. Like Creed used to say, with arms wide open. Yes, I know. I have that too. Yeah. Here's the kicking competition, just to fill you in a little bit, not to throw you off too much. But Anders Carlson goes 2 for 2 on field goals. His long was a 46. Greg Joseph goes, I believe he had one field goal. He does have one field goal for 35, but then I think he had an extra point as well. So they both got a shot at kicking twice, 2 times. They both made them. Nobody missed. I said last week, and I'm going to really try not to backpedal too much because let's see a little bit more football. But if there's any takeaway from the kicking competition in preseason week 1, is that Greg Joseph's, both of his kicks, right down the middle. And he's got that number 2. And we all know what number 2 at kicker means. It means great things. I'm almost, maybe it's Crosby's the second coming of Crosby. We don't know. It's too early. I'm not going to jump to conclusions quite yet. But Anders Carlson's, both of his kicks, like they snuck their way inside the
yeah.
goalposts. Yes, making it is crucial, but the purity of it is also important. And if I'm going to take a winner or the guy after week 1, I'm going to give it to Greg Joseph after one preseason game. And that's surprising because I thought it was Carlson's job to lose. But if these guys go neck and neck and they're both making them and one of them is consistently down the pike, it's going to be hard to keep Carlson.
Is it down the pike or is it down the pipe?
It's down the pike.
Are you sure?
I'm not. No. This
Okay.
is that whole Pam Pan situation. I think I can clear this up for us. Right down the coming down the pike. versus down the pipe. It's either or. It's tomato,
Oh,
tomato.
okay. We're both right.
Comment down below. Yeah. Comment down below what you think is the right way to say it. It's honestly a term that I'd never use, and it just came to me when talking about kickers for whatever reason. Speaking of
Yeah.
kickers, kickoff rule. I'm not going to ask you any questions about the kickoff because apparently you didn't even watch the game. I don't even know why you're on this show.
No, I remember I remember the commentators talking about the new kickoff rules, and I did watch the kickoffs, but I didn't really analyze it that much. I mean, they just looked like, for the most part, looked like kickoffs to me. And there's like a landing zone, right? And if the kicker kicks it there, it can be returned. And
I'm going to break it. I'll break it
yeah,
down.
you break it down.
And I'm going to break it down because, yeah, well, here's the thing. You remember when they changed the overtime rules and you had to explain to your wife or your mother or your second, your in-law that you don't really care for, but he's watching the game with you, and you have to explain to them that, if we score the touchdown first, then they don't get the ball. But if we only kick a field goal, we don't win. They get it. This is what's going to happen this upcoming season. They're going to have that stupid landing zone, and I'm going to have to explain a dozen times, I guarantee you, how this works. So if the ball does not get to the 20-yard line, all right, the offense starts at the 40-yard line. So they can fair catch it at the 22-yard line, and they will automatically take that ball and bring it to the 40-yard line. Okay? Are we following so far? Because that's pretty messed up, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
If the ball goes directly into the end zone and skips the whole landing zone, it comes out to the 30. Now, if the ball hits the ground inside the landing zone and bounces into the end zone, then the ball starts on the 20-yard line. So 40, 30, 20, or you return it. So have fun with that one. And they're all trying to figure it out. There's a learning curve here, but I think at the very least, you're going to see more kickoffs get, I don't know, who knows what we're going to see. We're not going to see any bunts. And the other reason why we're not going to see any bunts is they changed the offsides, the onside kick rule as well. So with the onside kick rule, you can't surprise teams anymore. So they'll come out at halftime and kick an onside kick and try to get the ball back to start and swing momentum in your direction. That whole thing's off the table. You can only kick an onside kick with less than 2 minutes to go in the game, and you have to announce it to the other team that you're going to do it. So the kickoff has changed. What does that mean? Is it going to create more buzz? Is it not? It's going to create a lot more conversation. But through week 1 of preseason, there were 2 kick returns taken to the house. And I'm pretty sure I'm using that term correctly. 2 kick returns were taken to the house and returned for a touchdown. And there has not been a single in the preseason the last 5 years, not a single one of them went back for a kickoff return. So in theory, we should see either a lot more kicks going through the end zone or through the uprights that they're not even going to get a shot at it, or you might see some more kick returns. But boy, they're going to have that. I assume they're going to have that screen overlay for every single game throughout the entire year and probably beyond, changing the rules of football. So after hearing about this for the very first time, what's your takeaways? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting. I don't like the 40-yard line option. That doesn't seem very fair. But I can understand so as a kicker, you're going to want to be more skillful with your kick because the goal is going to be to land it in the landing zone, but also get it to bounce into the end zone. That's going to be the goal because that's where they start at the 20. The other thing that's different about it, I believe, so the outside of the kicker and the kick returner, the blockers and the tacklers, I guess, if to make it simple, they line up on the what yard line, the 40 or something like that, and they can't leave that line until the returner catches it, correct?
Yeah, nobody moves. Nobody moves until the ball is caught. And the only people that can see that the ball is caught is the kicking team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And I guess the NFL, is this in the name of safety or is it in the name of trying to make the kickoff more exciting again, because they've changed the kickoff rule so many times, and kickoffs really, for the most part, became you don't pay attention to the kickoff because it's going to be a touchback 99% of the time. So are they attempting to make it a little more exciting, which I guess this does. It opens up the more opportunity for a return, but it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
In theory, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to be safer. It is a safety thing because you're not having guys run full speed and smashing into the defender. And in theory, and we saw it in preseason, there should be more opportunities for kick returns and big dynamic plays. But Rich Bisaccia had his interview a few weeks ago, and they spent 2 days with the NFL and officiating, and they spent hours trying to dissect this thing. And one thing that I took away outside of these stupid rules, and I'm not, okay, maybe stupid is strong, but outside of these new rules, is that it's going to be a little bit fluid, especially throughout preseason. He expected that after a couple of games and seeing in action that there'd be changes, but it's definitely something different to explain and look at and watch. And for those of you that had not heard exactly how the rules work, this was your rundown, and we can move on to a different topic if we'd like to.
Yeah, let's move on. I don't want to talk about kickoffs all day.
Well, what's left? Denver? Do we want to talk about Denver?
Let's see. Oh, I did want to mention this actually doesn't have anything to do with the Packers. I guess a little bit, because the Packers played the Browns this past weekend. But I specifically remember before the game started, the commentators, the camera zoomed in on this guy on the Browns defense. So he's a rookie D tackle, Mike Hall Jr. So they specifically zoomed in on him, and the commentators were talking about, oh, this is a guy to watch. He's their new rookie, drafted in the first round, I believe. Watch out for this guy today, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if he made any tackles. I don't know how he did in the game. But today, I did see Adam Schefter come out with news that specific guy that they zoomed in on and highlighted in the pregame, he was arrested on Monday for, what was it, domestic violence. Apparently he pointed a gun at some woman, but I just thought it was funny that they zoomed in, watch this guy. He's the guy to watch for today. And then 2 days later, he's in the news for doing something not so good.
I think we're going to have a new segment on this show called Character Watch with Christian Ferguson, because you should bring up all these guys as random player of the week, because it's going to happen every week. I guarantee there'll be someone who makes some stupid decision.
Yeah.
Cleveland, though, doesn't surprise you all that much, does it?
Not really. I can't remember what the city was. It was like, it wasn't Akron. It started with an A, but I don't remember what city in Ohio it was. It wasn't Cleveland itself, but.
Well, because Cleveland doesn't start with an A, so.
Right.
Rule out that one.
Right. I get my alphabet mixed up
around the rest,
but I think I got it right this time.
Around the rest of the NFC North, the Lions played on, what was that, Thursday night. None of their starters played, so not really a whole lot to go into. Is there on the Detroit Lions? They're going to be good this year. Christian thinks they're going to be 14-3. Outside of that, the Bears, they played on Saturday. Did you get a chance to catch any of the Bears highlights? I didn't
watch any other football besides the Packer preseason game.
Okay, well, Caleb Williams is, he turned a couple heads. You got him at 6-11. We'll see. You might have to give him another win or two.
I did hear about JJ McCarthy getting hurt, though. That's not so good for Vikings fans. I mean, I know we kind of talked about how we think Sam Darnold's going to be the starter, but I just saw today that he's having surgery. He tore a meniscus, so he's done for a while. Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Look it up. I got to pee quick anyway. Look it up. What'd you find?
All right, so you are exactly right. On Saturday, JJ McCarthy went 11 for 17 for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns, so a pretty good performance. However, he did get hurt with a meniscus. Am I reading that right? So McCarthy reported persistent soreness to the team when players reconvened Monday. and the 10th overall pick in the draft out of the national champion Michigan was sent for further examination. So essentially, why doesn't this even say? It's a knee injury, and they won't know the extent of the knee injury until they get in there and perform the procedure. So it will either be, they're saying it could be a 1 month, or if it's a full tear, it could be the entire season. So that's really interesting that he didn't say anything until Monday. That's got to be, you've got to think it's probably a partial, right? Or is he the, God, no, just Chuck Norris of Vikings quarterbacks over there, just breaking muscles and playing through it.
Or is it,
you got yourself a Chuck Norris?
Or is it a rookie mistake not saying something and maybe causing more damage than was originally there?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we both agreed that we didn't see JJ McCarthy probably starting the season anyway. It was going to be a Sam Darnold sort of a show for the first few weeks at least. We both have them at 4-13 and 3-14. Probably doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, Vikings fans. It doesn't matter. No, I didn't hear that. I missed that news on Monday. I must have been too busy having a life, I guess. I don't know. We'll find out.
And I was off today.
Anything else you want to talk about before we look to Denver?
Just let me check my notes here real quick. Well, just a comment on something I commented on before. The Love to Watson connection has become more and more interesting. So I mentioned the deep ball to Watson in practice has connected 3 or 4 times so far this season. And one thing to note is who he beat in this practice on Tuesday. Eric Stokes I think it was at his pro day, ran a 4.25 40. And Watson, before getting drafted, I think was at 4.36. So Stokes is a fast cornerback. Watson beat him for this deep ball touchdown in practice on Tuesday. But another thing that I read when I was looking into that a little bit was the pass game coordinator for the Packers has made comments about how fast Watson's been playing in training camp. He mentioned that they clocked him in practice at 21 miles an hour at times. So Watson's looking real good, and the connection with Love is looking good. So I'm very excited to see and hope that continues. So that's just
21.9 miles per hour to be exact. I mean, I read the same article. No, but hey, that's another. That did you watch the Olympics?
You might as well.
That
just
one guy
up.
won the 100 meter. He won the 100 meter dash by 0.005 of a second. So okay, we're gonna give him that extra 0.9 miles.
Did you know that there's a guy from my hometown, Rice Lake, Wisconsin, who was in that 100 meter final and also in the 200 meter final? Shout out to Kenny Bednarek, Rice Lake native and 2-time Olympian now. He won the silver in Tokyo and the silver in the 200 this year. So pretty cool. Small town, Rice Lake, 8,000 people. We got an Olympian among us.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. It's something to be proud of. To your point, Watson, God, I hope he stays healthy. He will be a difference maker of stretching that field, because if I had to pick a number 1 wide receiver, which we weren't going to talk about it, I mean, I think Dobbs is the most talented guy on the roster. And I back that up to the fact that when I was at practice, and this isn't just the practice I was at, but other ones I've been following and keeping up to date on, Alexander is continually paired up against Dobbs. So you look at him being as skilled as he is as a wide receiver, Watson being that deep threat, and then, man, if they can keep that entire defense nervous, that's going to open up all sorts of options for Josh Jacobs when he's running. I mean, it's a lot. I think Matt LaFleur can figure out this offense, but man,
let's look at
deep ball and
look at the wide receiver core, and you're already kind of doing it, putting these guys into categories. So Christian Watson, deep ball guy, Romeo Dobbs, from what we've been hearing and seeing, best route runners in the wide receiver room. Like you said, Jair's typically matched up against him, which he's going to be matched up with team's number 1 wide receiver, depending on the scheme. But so Watson deep ball guy. Dobbs may become one of the more favorite targets because of his route running ability and his, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hands.
Reliability. Yep. That's a good way to put it too. So you got those two guys, but then we can't forget about Reed. Reed was essentially the Packers' number one wide receiver last year. He led the receiver room in yards last season. But he's that slot guy who can also go deep, but he's going to be doing a lot of across the middles. He's going to be doing end around type stuff. So you see Reed and probably the two tight ends, Kraft and Musgrave, as that across the middle area. So you're kind of, I mean, we're kind of, from the way I see it, that's kind of where these guys land.
Well, you could put Wicks on the opposite side.
Oh, geez, how
Too.
did
So
I
now
even
you
forget
have
about him?
exactly. So now you can have two just absolute studs with speed that can catch a deep ball, and then that just opens up the rest of the field. And then if you don't want to pass it, just fucking give it to the best running back in the league 2 years ago and see if he can
Right.
pick up a couple yards. I mean, it's an absolutely lethal combination paired with a quarterback that has not hit his ceiling. I mean, yeah, it's it's crazy. This
It's
offense could be
exciting.
so good. And we're not going to see them at all on Sunday night against Denver. Let's get into it. We're talking about the Denver Broncos. No starters are officially playing at Denver. I can't actually, I will say that I'm a little bit surprised by that because traditionally, that second preseason game is that game where your starters at least play a quarter, if not the first half. But we're sitting them all out. Packers are sharing a joint practice with the Denver Broncos on Friday night. So I'm guessing they'll get most of their work in against different looks and different defenses on that night. But it's going to boil down. And this brings me to that. The one thing I'm going to be watching, the one thing that everyone needs to be watching is the quarterback battle. I'm not convinced that Sean Clifford is our number two quarterback. I think he's a baller when the game lights are on. But Pratt had himself a pretty good game on Saturday as well. He had some very good looking passes. He had a nice block on a run that Emmanuel Wilson was taking. I see the first half going to Clifford, and then I see the second half going to Pratt. And this is going to be the biggest matchup or the biggest battle that I'm watching on Sunday night. And I encourage you all to watch because this is where jobs are made. They're only going to keep two quarterbacks on this roster. We drafted one in the 7th round in Pratt. We'll get to see firsthand if one really starts to shine more than the other. That's what
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, outside of the both of those guys in the preseason game, in practice this week already, I've heard some things about both of them. So I can't remember which coach it was, but one of the offensive coaches commented on Sean Clifford. He was asked the question about, do you think he just doesn't do well at practice, but when the lights are on, he can turn it on? And whichever offensive coach it was made a comparison to Matt Flynn, one of the former Green Bay Packers backup quarterbacks who,
Oh, we all know Matt Flynn.
yeah, eventually had to come in and shine for a little bit at least when the lights were on. I think it was a night game too, right? Literally the lights were on and he came in and saved the day. But on the other hand, I did see that in practice on Tuesday, Pratt ended the practice with the second team offense in a 2-minute drill situation, which I think it was Packers beat writer that tweeted that, and the beat writer himself was a little surprised to see Pratt in that role to end practice. So we'll see. Yeah, it'll be definitely one that I'll be watching too because it's an important position. You know, it's, God forbid, Love goes down, we got to have somebody reliable to continue the season. So
It's not even if he goes down long term. It's maybe he tweaks something in the third quarter of a game, and he needs someone to put a drive together or sustain a lead. You got to have someone back there. I'm a firm believer that if the starter goes down for more than 8 weeks, the season's over. We saw that with the great Aaron Rodgers and the Jets last year. That come week 10, 11, they were out of the hunt. So don't even bother with Rodgers, even if he could come back. But it is an important position to carry the team for half a game, maybe a game if absolutely needed. But yeah, that'll be the thing I'm watching. And we're 17. It's crazy. I mean, this is only our 5th episode, but we're 17 practices into training camp, and there are only 4 remaining. There's one on Wednesday, the 14th. They have a joint practice on Friday. They have a practice next week on Tuesday, and then a joint practice with the Ravens on Thursday before their final game against the Ravens. So we're coming down to the wire here. These are the moments that we've been waiting for, these preseason games, to see who's going to step forward, who's going to jump out, who's going to perform. And clock's ticking. We're going to cut down that roster to 53 here in less than, well, what? In about 2 weeks, quite frankly. So time to put up or shut up. And
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. I don't know if I necessarily care which one wins. I just want to see somebody emerge with that I'm feeling confident behind Jordan Love.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put any bets on who's going to win it. I just want to see someone who can confidently go out there and carry the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, and making the comment about how few practices there are left. This is the time where we may see the preseason games get a little bit more exciting because there aren't very many practices. Some of these guys, well, and like we've talked about, a lot of these Packers players are trying to solidify their starting position, solidify their spot on the roster. So you're going to see guys going a little bit harder than they were last week because of how limited their time is to make a statement and put their mark on the preseason at least. So yeah, I'll definitely be tuning in. I'll be paying a little bit closer attention this week for sure.
Well, I'll be able to watch it. It's a Sunday night game, which makes it way easier for definitely my schedule, but I think everyone's schedule. You don't have right now. We're enjoying summer, so even if you weren't working like I was, it's tough to head in on a Saturday and 3 o'clock and watch a bunch of second and third stringers compete. There's better things. You got to enjoy summer while you can. As much as I love football, you got to enjoy those summer months. You can't wish it away.
Well, yeah, especially in Wisconsin, we don't have much summer anyway, so got to take advantage when you can.
Outside of that position, again, I'm going to be watching the running back groups to see, how much Dillon plays. Hopefully, Marshawn Lloyd can play get more than one carry, but that's really a question mark on whether or not he'll even play. It's early on in this week. Those hamstring issues can be a real pain in the ace, if you know what I mean. And that's one of the things that he's struggling with right now. Rest of the positions, I mean, the receivers that step up, the defense continuing to play dynamic and make plays. I don't know. Nobody really jumped out outside of who we already discussed. Maybe we'll get a new name. I guess if you could predict, I'll give you a fun one. Predict someone whose name we didn't discuss that you might expect to have a good preseason game.
Well, so even before you asked the question, my mind went to that linebacker competition. I do specifically remember seeing McDuffie out there with the first team defense, but after that, I didn't pay close enough attention to see who came in and who performed at that linebacker position.
Edgerrin Cooper was out.
He
was inactive on Saturday.
That's right.
Yep.
I saw that after the game. I looked at the inactives list after the game and was disappointed by that because obviously that's a position battle that we want to see worked out, and maybe it is worked out. Maybe McDuffie's the guy, like we talked about before, his history with the defensive coordinator, and he's been with the team for a year now. So yeah, maybe that position battle's figured out already anyway. But yeah, that linebacker position and that other safety spot beside McKinney. Offensive side of the ball, yeah, I hope to see Lloyd a little bit more because I'd really like to see him on the field and get more carries. So yeah, that'll be one to watch. Receivers, I don't know if there's a lot of wiggle room for someone to even DeBose. I know you've made comment about how he stood out last week, but I do remember seeing something prior to the preseason game that DeBose has been Clifford's favorite target in training camp. So Clifford's the guy on the field. DeBose is his favorite target.
Helps.
That definitely helps him see the ball more than some of these other receivers trying to make the roster. So I don't know if that DeBose performance last weekend really makes as big of a dent in that receiver room. But yeah, maybe we see someone else in that receiver core stand out next week. But yeah, there's, like we've talked about, there's so many positions where there's competition, which is what you want. But it's coming down to the wire, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and one thing that you just kind of reminded me of right there was that it seemed evident that the Packers had significantly more depth than Cleveland did on Saturday night. And it'll be interesting to see if that carries over for this Denver game because we're going to get nothing but second and third string players. So we're probably going to see a lot of Bo Nix for the Denver Broncos as he continues to figure out his flow at quarterback for the Broncos. And so you're going to have a lot of players, such as Edger and Cooper, that gets to play some safeties. I'm looking at Kalen King on the cornerback spot. He was our late draft pick at cornerback. We're gonna get to see if these guys can compete, maybe against a better than second string type of offense, if that makes sense. Because I think they're gonna probably play Bo Nix the entire first half, would be my guess. Try to get him more acclimated. So they're
And
gonna
in
get
turn, Bo Nix being on the field, that means the first team offense is on the field because he's their guy, right? He's
right.
their starter. So yeah, we'll see Bo Nix, but it's second and third string Packers defense against the Broncos first team, which is important for these guys fighting for a position.
Yeah, it's important. If we come away with a victory in Denver, then damn, we got just as much depth as we think we got.
Yeah.
If that's the case. So, well, yeah, Jordan Morgan, I hope plays. I don't know. I'd like to see him out of the field. Just some of these players that I guess we're missing, as well as duplicating that success in week 2, and then maybe coming back, bouncing back like a Bo Melton who had a rough week 1 in the preseason. Not
AJ
much else to
Dillon
say.
too,
We'll dive
maybe.
into him. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe he
maybe
bounces
they'll give him
back
the
a little bit.
ball. I think
Yeah.
we know what we got in him, though, don't we? Don't we know
Yeah,
what we
I
have?
know. I agree with you. I'm invested in the guy. I love what he
I know.
I love his full-on commitment to the organization and the city and the state as a whole. Like, he's fully embraced it, which is cool to see from a guy who's getting paid. Well, what was his contract? However $1 million. I don't remember. It was a 1
Keep going.
year
I'll look up.
small. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount, but he's getting paid a lot of money to play football. But he decided to do it in Green Bay because he loves what the organization, what the city, and what the fans represent. So I've fully invested in AJ Dillon as a person. I know he hasn't become this star running back for the team, but I would really hate to see him go. But it's ultimately they got to do what's right for the team. So I support
So
that
he
too.
counts 1.2 million against the cap, and he can make up to 2.7 million through incentives and stats and whatnot. But I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. It's not an easy choice to make.
Yeah.
And maybe he's the guy that can step up on not defense, but special teams. And maybe we run with 4 running backs. I mean, crazier things have happened, but I think they know what they got in them. I don't think a week 2 preseason game is going to really determine a whole lot on whether you cut the guy or not. I think we got, with Aaron Jones being as hurt as he was last year and a lot of AJ Dillon time, I think we know what we got. Maybe it's just more of Will Lloyd, and I can't keep all these freaking names straight.
Yeah. It's a really small
Williams?
sample size too. That's something to think about. It was 1 preseason game. I don't even know how many carries he had. Obviously, we saw those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 plays where we got disappointed, but it's a small sample size. The coaching staff sees his performance in practice every day. They see his development every day. So we're only seeing a small sample size. It's hard to lose faith solely on that one game, but we may not see more because they see it in practice, right? So we may not see him get more carries next week, but he still sticks around and is going to be the number 2 guy, at least for a while, because we don't see practice every day.
4 carries for 2 yards. That's 0.5 yards a carry.
Well, it's 4 carries.
Oh, yeah. He's playing against the backups. I mean, come on. You can pick up a yard against the backups.
I don't know. Backups backups does mean a little bit, but they're still NFL caliber players, right?
Stats. AJ Dillon in 23, he averaged 3.4 yards per carry, down from 4.1 yards per carry, down from 4.3, down from 5.3. He's trending in the wrong direction. I work in an industry that we look at trends and forecasts and statistics. That's my hot take. I don't know. We're either running with 4 running backs or they're going to cut them. I'm going to say it right now. Especially if Wilson goes out there and rushes for another 100 yards and a touchdown, you're not getting rid of that guy.
Yeah, but he was playing against backups. He was playing against backups, right?
You're not getting rid of. Yeah, and so was AJ Dillon when he had 3 attempts to pick up a yard. We're going in circles. Let's wrap up this video. That's all we need to talk about tonight.
I think this is one of the few differences that we've had in opinion.
I just hate that he can't pick up a fucking yard. And there's my one curse word for this video because it's so frustrating.
Nope, I get it. I get the frustration. I agree. It is frustrating. But I'm not ready to give up on him. I hope the Packers keep him and we see him on the field. I think so you think they either run with 4 running backs on the roster or he gets cut. That's your take?
I think if Emmanuel Wilson goes out there and has a great performance, because this isn't new. Like I brought up Emmanuel Wilson's name in like our first video together, and you looked at me and you're like, me. I don't know if me. But they draft a running back. They go sign our first 2 spots are taken, regardless of whether or not Lloyd is healthy or plays a lot. It comes down to do they keep 3 or do they cut 1? And my opinion is that I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. I think it ends up being Jacobs, Dillon, Floyd as the 3.
Is it Floyd? I've been saying Lloyd this whole time.
It is Lloyd. It's not Floyd. It's Lloyd. It's Lloyd. Have I been saying Floyd? Have I been saying Floyd the whole time?
No, I don't think so. But I've been questioning myself. So
Floyd.
All right. On that note, thanks to you all 10 of you who stuck around for the entire 1 hour and video. We appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe if you have not subscribed. More content to come. We are a few weeks away from the regular season, and yeah, this is what we do. We chat Packers. We're going to talk, more football stuff. And got any closing thoughts?
I don't think so, Tim. I think
all right.
covered everything. Looking forward to more Packers football this weekend, and more
you want to do the
lively conversation with you.
Do you want to do the sign off?
You're gonna have to give it to me. I don't have it memorized.
Until next time, I will see you. We both will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.